these assignments wasn't so that we could grade you, so that you could answer the questions of the Lord. It's like this class that we just finished up a minute ago. How are we going to reach these people? What are we going to do? I agree with Brother Connor. First thing we better be doing is praying. Second thing we better be doing is studying to show ourselves approved, not to the world, not to religion, not to our preachers, but to God. Because the things that He will lay on your heart to study, the things that you will key in on, and that the Holy Spirit will use to help you, is what you're going to be able to use, and that will become the answer that you need for the people that God's going to put you in front of. And so, how many of you gave me the final term paper? Anybody? All right, so let's just discuss it. I don't think we'll take long tonight. The final term paper was, which attribute of Christ has affected your life the most and why? So, I'm going to catch Ethan with his mouth full. Ethan, what attribute of Christ has affected your life the most?
Probably mercy. Why is because without God's mercy, without God's forgiveness, it can't. Whenever Jesus Christ saves you, it builds a relationship. It starts a relationship, and that relationship is remains through all of eternity, unless you sin. And that sin separates that communication between you and God. And were it not for God's mercy, that would be a very short-lived communication. You wouldn't be able to have the power from God to witness, or to be able to handle normal everyday stresses. There would be no joy in life. And I guess that's why.
How do you think that you can use that to help somebody?
I don't understand the question.
In the book of Ephesians, if we were to do, and I really would like to do that, Brother Con and I were talking about the different subjects, the courses that we could teach next semester. And the only one I've had any peace about is to start with Old Testament history. I really want to teach on the epistles. But I know the way that I am, and there's no way that I will be able to do that in this class setting and take it that fast. Brother Paul is the only one in here. He's heard me teach the book of Ephesians.
Yes, it took us, I was gonna say, it took us well over a year.
Yeah, it took 2.5 years. And even then, I didn't touch the garden. Out of my personal studies in the book of Ephesians, one of the things that I found is that there's 3 spirits. There's a spirit of knowledge, there's a spirit of understanding, and there's a spirit of wisdom. And that's mentioned in there, and you can call it a spirit of wisdom, or you can say a time of knowledge, a time of understanding, and a time of wisdom. Let me give you my interpretation of that, because that's what I'm after as we conclude this The Life of Christ study. I feel like that I've done you the worst job that I've ever done that it's so important for us to understand who Christ is, not who he was. Because who he was and who he's going to be is who he is. There is no changing to him.
Yeah.
He's the eternal. But here's the way the Lord moves and works in all of our lives. The principles are the same. And see, that's the beauty of a biblical principle. Anybody can apply it, even a reprobate. Because a principle is a foundational truth. Bill Gates understands the principles of giving. Give, and it shall be given unto you in good measure, shaken, pressed down, run over. Bill Gates is by no means a Christian. Steve Jobs died, started Apple, understood that, set up foundations. Bill and Melinda Gates give away $149 million a year. It's a lot of money. But they understand because biblical principles work. Well, here's the principle of witnessing. Here's the principle that we can use to reach the millennials, or Generation X, Generation Y, us baby boomers, the World War II generation that's dying. I mean, hundreds a day now are moving off the scene. When John Glenn died this past week, he was the last of the original astronauts. I've met a couple of the astronauts, and one of them was a friend with my dad, but they were second generation. But here's the principle. Your experiences is knowledge. And God gives us a spirit of knowledge. And you have to, and you can't skip this step. You cannot get wisdom without understanding. And you cannot have understanding until you have the knowledge. That's the reason it's important for us to study. The reason, but see, knowledge sometimes is just facts. But what God does, and there's times that he has put us in places so that our life's experience would prepare us for the future, or for somebody else's future. I can't imagine Brother Con and Miss Cindy wanting to relive last year. They didn't sign up for it, didn't want it, didn't ask for it. How many times has there been something in your life that way? I mean, I was talking to David just a minute ago. I remember what it was like to go preach for my future father-in-law. You know, I've been where he's at. And what he's looking forward to, David has a whole set of expectations that he, in his heart, and he shared some of those with Kylie. Kylie's got another whole set of expectations. And when they come together, they're going to find out that some of it's going to be there. And then some of it's not. And we have these experiences in our life. And here's what God wants to do for us if we allow him to do it. He wants every one of us to have a spirit or a time of understanding. And what I mean by that is this. How did the experience or the circumstance that you have or had in your life, how did it help you? How did it draw you closer to Christ? You see, if we can't write down, and that's the reason that I was having you to write stuff down, and some of you, I understand our times are limited, and more, the more we go is the worse it's getting. But you ought to go take some time to write down these this down because until you can put it in black and white and pencil in your understanding of what God did for you. Shannon, what's your favorite gospel? Which one of the four has meant the most to you? I mean, it's hard to, I think it's hard to choose. It's not an easy subject, but which one? If you had to choose right now, what would you say? Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John?
That's tough. I don't know. I could say John.
That was my default. But there's things in Matthew that mean so much. There's things in Luke. All right, but now, if you were to hand a gospel to somebody, where you're witnessing, what's important about, what's so special about this book? Why is the King James the best? We need an understanding for ourselves. Because here's the way I look at it, and this is, I mean, you're getting Cardi theology tonight. There's always a spirit of there's a spirit of knowledge that sometimes it's just facts, it's experiences, it's life. But if we will ask the Lord, what are you doing? What are you trying to teach me? What do you want me to know from this? Then what God will do is He will give you an understanding for yourself of how this particular experience. Now it may come a week, a month, a year, it may be 10 years down the road from the time you actually experience it to the time you get to the understanding. But we ought to get to the point that we have an understanding of here's how God used this, X, whatever it is, to help me, to draw me closer to Him. It may be another week, it may be another month, it may be another 10 years down the road. But here's the difference between understanding and wisdom. Understanding is how God helped you be closer to Him. Wisdom is taking that understanding of that experience and helping somebody else. Impart it to them. When you read, and you ought to read a psalm. I mean, a psalm, but a proverb every day. I mean, you know my feelings on that. You know, there's 31 of them, so you read a different one every day of the month. So that means at least on 28, 29 of them, you're going to read them 12 times a year. When you start off and you start reading those things, and a lot of those proverbs talk about that He's trying to impart wisdom. God wants to do that to you and I. God expects you and I to be effective in this world. I can't get away from Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 1. It says this, walk worthy of the vocation wherewith you are called. Some of us are called to dig ditches, some to be salesmen, some to work on equipment, some to fry chicken. That may not be your ultimate calling. But whatever it is that we're given, we ought to walk worthy of that. Sometimes it's to be a housewife. I think it's the hardest job. Or a mother, or a grandparent. But whatever it is, we're to walk worthy of that. So that if it's one of the millennials, I mean, Faith, your question tonight bothers me. That I don't have an ABC, 1, 2, 3, here's a step plan to go through. And it bothers me because I don't, and yet I understand it's because there isn't one. There's some of these things and some of these people and these relationships, and that's what Brother Con has been talking about with this, that, and I don't want you to think for 1 minute that he was trivializing or minimalizing someone to the Lord. You need at least a Romans road or something. We ought to all not only be able to tell what the gospel is, but we need to be able to explain it. And if you don't understand the life of Christ, you can't get there. When I asked you what kind of attribute, or which attribute, it wasn't just the works of the life of Christ. Paul, what attribute means the most to you of Christ?
Probably compassion.
How's it affected you?
It's gotten me through some really tough times in my life.
Mine's the immutability of Christ, or the unchangeableness of him. I mean, honestly, I don't know how we can pick one attribute, or one thing. But if I have to, if you pin me down, just like I did Shannon a minute ago, which one? Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John? Which attribute? I was telling Monica today, mine's the unchangeableness of God. And it's like he said over in the Old Testament. He said, I am God, and I change not. Therefore, in other words, because of that, we are not consumed. You ever get mad? Saturday evening, I told everybody Sunday at our church service, man, I backslid Saturday night. About 6:30, 6:45. This guy in an older model, big Chevy Suburban, 4-wheel drive, comes up, does a donut in the parking lot, drives out, and then cuts through our backyard. Goes out through the grass, around by the swing set, does a donut out by our softball field, and comes back up, hops back up on the pavement, and out the road he went. You know what this old boy wanted to do? I mean, the redneck hillbilly came out there. I wanted to
Shotgun?
take a- Oh, yeah, I thought of that. I got a 12-gauge pump sitting there, just that far from the door. But what I really wanted to do was run out there with a baseball bat and beat every window in there. With 6 head out hit him. No, ain't that Christian? And I did pray. I said, Lord, let him have 4 flat tires. Then I added, and let me see it. No, Lord, no. You know, and so I knew he wasn't going to have 4 flat tires because the Bible tells us not to take pleasure when we see his judgment. But I'd have a real hard time. That old boy pulled into the parking lot. Well, they're telling me Jesus loves you. Because it just made me mad. But the understanding, the fact that Jesus has never changed, and I've done a lot worse than that. I've drugged the name of Christ through the mud with my life and my testimony more than once. And the fact that God still loved me. I'd have got mad. I'd have killed me a long time ago if I'd been God. I'd have made an example out of me. I mean, you folks would have seen lightning just split me right down the middle. I'm thankful God did. I'm thankful for the mercy that he showed at Calvary. That part of his attributes, the compassion that he had as he looked out over Capernaum. He's still looking at me. Lana, what's the attribute that means most to you?
Probably his love. And that entails everything else about him. I think of his forgiveness, because this takes his love to forgive us.
Amen. If you notice that it's hard to come up with something because God is love.
Yeah.
It's not just that he contains love or has love or shows love. He is love. But he's also righteousness. He's also holiness. He's also purity. But he's long-suffering. He's compassion. Judy, what's yours?
I would say it's long suffering. It's tolerance of me.
How's it affected you? Besides making you put up with me. That's me. I'm telling you, folks.
I would say that makes me more conscious of being long suffering. Thankful for his forgiveness.
The reason I'm putting you on the spot, I guess, because we need answers. It's not just the kids that Faith's working with at a cookie shop that's asking questions. It's the people that every one of us are hanging around.
I was thinking him being omnipresent, because he is everywhere, and that makes me think about watching what I do, what I say. And at work, it's big to think about who you are and what leads you as being a leader or something like that. And so I picked integrity, because it take like a word or something that you're gonna do, and really being able to be integrity or have integrity is always doing right, but I can't do that if I don't know that God's watching me, because I'm always gonna try and do wrong. If I can get away with it, and I can get more stuff personally from it, I can gain, I'm gonna try and do it until I know that's against what God wants, and He's still watching.
Amen.
And I've kind of, I've mentioned this to you once before, don't know whether you remember or not, but the verse that says to work is to the Lord and not unto man can really get in the way sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, we know to do right, and we know to be right. But why do we do that?
Mm-hmm.
There's times, honestly, folks, there's times that I did right because I was afraid what would happen if I got caught doing wrong.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the fear of God's the beginning of wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a question for you tonight. I want to ask you. I want every one of you to think about this in depth. What kind of faith do you have? Now, that's a multifaceted question. Sometimes you have to, before you can answer what kind of faith do you have, there's a couple of other questions you need to answer. The first would be, where did it originate? Every one of us rode in a car to get here tonight. Or truck, vehicle. We had the windows rolled up. Trying to stay warm. Got here. Every one of us exhibited faith just to get here tonight. How many of you passed a vehicle? How many of you were on a 2-lane road and you passed a vehicle coming towards you?
Everybody.
Allie come in a few minutes ago and had some supper and all, and she showed me the keys. She says, "Daddy let me drive in the snow." You know, not that there's any snow on the roads right now, but in her mind, you know. And she was proud of that. Every one of us exhibited faith. We had faith that the person coming towards us was going to stay on their side of the line.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the kind of faith that'll get you to heaven.
Right.
How many of you have ever ridden in an airplane? A commercial airliner? How many of you knew the pilot? So by faith, you got in a hollow metal tube with wings, with somebody to controls you didn't know, to take you to 20, 30, 35,000 feet altitude, doing 400, 500 miles an hour, expecting to get there alive.
What about a military airplane?
Sometimes it's worse than you go. See, we have faith. What kind of faith do you have? Where do you come from? If you're going to convince one of these millennials that Jesus is truth, you're going to have the faith that comes from Him. I stand here tonight and tell you without any reservation whatsoever, your faith did not save you. We're saved by the faith of Jesus Christ. It's His faith in us. For by grace are ye saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is a gift of God. We all agree with that? It's His faith. How many of you in here can sin? I'm pretty good at it. Or bad would be the real description. And yet, how many of us knows that, how many of you believe that you're saved for eternity? How do you know that? How do you know that?
Because of what His Word says, and that's what I've done.
I'll say so. But to know it means it's more than just you've read it. I've read John Steinbeck. Didn't like it, but it was a requirement when I was in high school. I've read Oprah Winfrey. I mean, it's just like that guy up there. You know, he was asking those questions and saying, you know, well, if I believe this or if I believe that, does it make it true? No. You see, what faith is, faith isn't just what we believe. Faith's not a noun. It's a verb. It's an action. How many can quote Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1? Ben?
Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen.
What's the two things that it said it was? It says, now faith is. So apparently right here is a classic definition. Now faith is. What's the two things that it said it was?
Substance and evidence.
Substance, evidence. That's things that you can see. Solid. It's not what you believe. It's what we're doing because of what we believe. It's trust in action. That's what God's looking for. But, see, here's the difference between the faith of religion versus the faith that comes from God. The faith in religion is acting on an idea or acting on a particular belief system. But the thing that comes from God, the faith of Jesus Christ, is more than that. It's acting on the very character of God. The last 4 weeks, I have been just, I want to use the word stuck, but that's really not the word. I've been bound in the book of Genesis, reading about Abraham. Abraham didn't always have faith. He's the father of our faith. But he didn't always have faith. And the faith that he had wasn't always strong. I mean, it's after you read in there. It's after chapter 16 where, by the way, in chapter 16 it says that he believed God and it was accounted to him, it was imputed to him for righteousness. And that verse is quoted over in the New Testament. So at least at that point he was saved. It's after that he gives in to Sarah and goes and has Ishmael with Hagar. It's after that he lies to Abimelech. He's already lied to faith. time you get to chapter 26, 27, 28, and he's got to go offer Isaac. If we didn't have the New Testament, we wouldn't have a clear picture of everything that we see in the Old Testament. Because the New Testament tells us in no uncertain terms in Hebrews chapter 11 that he staggered not. So by the time that that God comes to him and he says, I want you to take Isaac, your only son, and I want you to go offer him on a mountain, on an altar as a burnt offering, on a place that I'll show you. All my life, I've thought Abraham just kind of wrestled and thought about, man, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And that was on his mind all the way to the mountain. That's not what Hebrews says. It said he staggered not. But how did he get to that point? How did he get to the point that he could so completely trust God that he'd take a young man? Now, by this time, Abraham is well over 100, maybe 112, 115. I don't know. He's 100 years old when Isaac was born. And how did he get to the point that he could go there? And when his son asked him, hey Pops, we got fire. Yeah, there's fire for burn offering. We got wood, I'm carrying it. I mean, he laid a whole load. It wasn't just a little bit of load. I'm talking more than just a wheelbarrow load of wood was on Isaac's back. They took it off of the animals. And he laid it on, took the whole load of wood that he took with him for the altar, for the sacrifice. He packed those animals that day with the full intention of offering his son. So that when Isaac asked him, Dad, I see, we got fire, we got wood, you got a knife. Where's the sacrifice? Abraham doesn't wring his hands in worry. He says, God will provide himself a sacrifice. How could Abraham do that? Because on multiple occasions, when his faith was failing, and the mercy of God, the compassion of God, the long-suffering of God, the omnipotence of God, the immutability of God all showed up and kept telling him over and over and over, quit worrying about Ishmael, quit worrying about all the rest. This is the boy that I'm going to bring your seed through. This is the one. Here's the promise. And God had put within Abraham that trust, that faith, so that when they get up there and he raises the knife above him, the only thing I can figure is Abraham must have figured Isaac's going to rise from the dead right here in front of me. Because he had already told his servants, y'all tarry right here. Me and the lad's going up to worship, and we will come again. He fully expected Isaac to walk back down that mountain with him. If you and I get to the point that we understand Christ, it goes way beyond a little textbook. It's this, getting in the depths of our soul. Con was joking about my faith. And I got less faith than most any of you in here. I wasn't joking when I said it jokingly, but honestly, there's a lot of times, just this past week, it wasn't my faith that got slew. I counted on my wife's faith. I've seen God answer her prayers. I wasn't sure if he's even listening to me. Yet we know he is. We know everywhere we turn, he's there. And it's not just that he's there watching us to make sure we're doing right. Oh no, it's a lot more than that. Because of his compassion, because of his long suffering, he's there, and he's there, and he's there, and he's here and he's over there. And he has his grace in every one of those spots. And remember what the definition of grace is. It's God helping us to do right. We have his mercy. I love that attribute about him. Because that takes care of my past. It takes care of when I do wrong. But we have him. And because we have him, we have his grace. The whole purpose of writing a paper about his parables, or about one of his books, or about him, is to draw us up closer to him. To help us understand what he's doing right now to help us. How many of you ever read where Paul said he was a debtor?
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
What was he a debtor for? Now, let me take something off the table. It wasn't his salvation. Do we all agree that salvation is a free gift of God?
Yeah.
How much do you owe for a free gift?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. So that can't be what Paul was a debtor for. So why did Paul write that not just him, but all of us are debtors to Christ? Why did he write that?
Because of what he's done for us since then.
Yes, exactly. It's for his grace. It's for what he's doing for us right now. Since we were saved. I mean, Paul and I were talking, I don't know, sometime in the last couple of weeks, but we were talking about our sin. Have you told a lie?
Mm-hmm.
Have you told one in the last 2 days?
Yes.
When was that sin paid for?
Over 2,000 years ago.
Our sins are paid for. It's like Brother Con got up here and was teaching just a few minutes ago. We're not going to hell because we've gone in a gay bar. Because our sins are paid for. The only reason that a man or woman, a boy or girl will ever go to hell is because they've not trusted, they've not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. So how are we going to make that real to the world? You see, the whole idea of practical apologetics is letting Christ be real enough to us that we can tell somebody else about him. Let's don't promote a false gospel. Now, and what I mean by that, a false gospel would be to promote the idea that you got to do something to be saved. What are you going to do? Where are you going to go? How far do you have to go? When are you going to know that you've gone far enough? How can you work and get salvation when he says there's none good? No, not one. How can we know? I mean, I watched the video, today they were showing on news, I was watching Fox News, and they were showing some of the electors from the Electoral College going in and making votes. And one of the videos that they showed, this woman stood up, and I don't remember which state it was, but she was screaming at these, I don't know, it was 6 or 8 electors that had gone in and they cast all their votes, and she started screaming at them and saying, "You're a traitor. This is my country. This is my country." And they literally had state police and pull her out. Well, it was his country too.
Mm-hmm.
And he was representing the voters of that state. Good night. I think the more that I read the constitutions, the more I realize that God really did protect the United States of America by his providence and his grace. I know all of the men that wrote the Constitution were Christians. But they had some God-given wisdom.
Yes, sir.
I don't know that it will ever get published, but I wrote a editorial, I wrote an opinion to the Wichita Eagle this week. And emailed it to them. The fact that we're forgetting one of the very reasons that we have the Electoral College set up in our Constitution is the fact that we're not a democracy. We're a republic. And because of that, the minority has a say. And I want you to know, everybody sitting in this room tonight's a minority.
Right.
Because if it was just a democracy, then only the majority rules. And if only the majority rules, then just 2 states would control all of the United States. And that's California and New York. In fact, it wouldn't even take all of those states, because if you go back and you look at the popular election, popular vote, where that Hillary, and I find it interesting that all these newscasters, it went from originally she was like 1.6 million, and now today it was, they were talking, you know, and it's being, I think she's, being, how many extra has she got? It was like 2.4 or 2.5, something like that. But today, as I was watching ABC News, Martha Raddatz, some of you know, as liberal as they get, and now it's Hillary had over 3 million more votes. And I thought, how? How did it grow? But the truth is this: if you take away the urban vote from Los Angeles, San Francisco, Sacramento, and New York City, she didn't win the popular vote. Just those 4 cities. Then you take away just those 4. But because she had those 4, she had a majority in a popular vote. But because of the wisdom of the founders of this nation, they realized we had the Electoral College that gave us the same number of electors as we have as House of Representatives. So that means Kansas had what, 6? 4?
You get senators and representatives.
Senators and representatives. And so it gave us as much say when it comes to this as it did bigger states. And it protected us. That's God's grace helping us today. But what are we going to do about it? Because it's not a matter, we've had a class now here for this whole semester. I mean, tonight's the last night. We're not going to get together again like this, and if Lord willing, until January 23rd. And we've had a whole class that the life of Christ and practical apologetics has just kind of intermingled and weaved together to teach us how to go out and be a witness to a lost and dying world. And if you take all the politics out of it, it doesn't matter whether you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent. What God has given us the ability to do is He at least pushed off and delayed a liberal agenda that would have prevented maybe in the next 4 years of you and I ever being able to live witness. But don't let that lull you to sleep. See, what bothers me the most right now is Christians will do what we did when Reagan was in office. And we'll just sit back and let somebody else come in and take us down the road. The Bible says we can have revival. I'm like Ben. I can't find anything in here that limits us and says that we have to have the falling away in 2017. Now, do I think we're living in the last days, in those perilous times? Absolutely. Do I think we're living in the falling away? Yes, absolutely. Do I think that God could put that on hold? He said He would. if that attribute, if that characteristic that I like, we all like it, I mean, you know, but my personal one was that unchangeableness of God. So, let me ask you a question. If that's true, does the verse over in Chronicles, 2 Chronicles, where he says, if my people, which are called by my name, do you think that verse is still applicable today?
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
Then that's what we ought to do. Brother Khan's answer to faith, how can we do this? How can I reach them? What can I do? First thing is pray. Second thing is you got to know it. Why is Jesus truth? Now understand, God has to reveal that. But folks, he's going to do that through his word and through us. There's no other way. Now he's only got one method. And that's the preaching of the gospel. But we need to be preaching with our lives. We need to be a testimony. Not everybody is called to preach. I would expect women to preach. You ladies, I mean, you can teach. But every single one of us, we're not just requested, we're commanded to go into all of the world. We don't have to be a missionary family. It starts next door. It tickled me to see Bill come in with his daughter and granddaughter. And I could see him come in there to the church Sunday morning. And I appreciate the way our people acted and made them feel like that they were welcome. Y'all got people that's visiting you, coming over here to temple. Others are being told about us and we come. Folks, we've got to make a difference. We've got to tell the truth. And the truth is this: they will go to hell. But not because they go to a bar, not because they've done something, not because they've told a lie, they've got sin. They'll go to hell because they've never trusted Christ. If the worst thing, and I really believe that the worst thing in the whole Bible that a person can be told is depart from me, I never knew you. If that's the worst possible thing that an individual could ever hear, then does that not leave us with the mandate to go introduce them? Let's go introduce them to our Lord. The life of Christ is the most amazing thing ever in the history of the universe. And he did it for us. Let's go to Lord in prayer. Father, we do thank you that you've watched over us, you've cared for us, and thank you for the ability just to come out and study your word. Lord, I'd ask you that you draw so close to you tonight. Lord, would you impress upon our hearts what you've done for us? We truly do owe you so much. For the way that you've watched over us and you've cared for us since you redeemed us. That you loved us so much that you didn't just take us on to heaven as soon as we got saved, but instead you left us here so that we could be part of your body and part of your work, part of your plan in this world. God, help us not to fail. Give us sense enough to trust you. The faith that we've got, if it doesn't come from you, it won't work. And so, Father, we ask you, increase our faith. Give us what we need, and then give us sense enough to use it. To be the kind of ground that you could grow it in us. Or give us fruit. If it's real faith, if it's real salvation, just like those professors and those preachers were talking about on that video tonight, if it's real, it's going to produce fruit. Lord, help us to produce good fruit. Fruit meat